Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So I have like what I consider one of my more important messages. I haven't given it yet, but the points in it and just basic survival and leadership and understanding, where we are and just something so simple and basic that could happen right now that could change the trajectory of so many people's lives in an apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic world. So I have something rather important. I was going to do it on its own, but there's a few things I want to cover that actually kind of feed into this. So some stuff with Jimmy Kimmels and his obsession with Trump and CNN and Biden. And let's start here because this is a follow-up to my video yesterday. So this is Hilaria Baldwin's Instaghoul page. And this is the post I showed you yesterday. And this is Alec Baldwin's Instaghoul page. Now, I had these things up next to each other because every once in a while I would check them because, they're they're hilarious. But they haven't been posting that much. And I almost took them down. I was going to take them down. I just forgot to. But I'm glad I left them up because I saw this video yesterday where he's, in a basement or wherever he is on the lam running from the fuzz, right? And then we saw this video where his family and him are welcoming their new sister and daughter on Mother's Day. So these were his two Mother's Day messages. And what's interesting about this, you see, that's the profile, that's the thumbnail to that video. Hilaria posted the same video. Here's Alec, right? And there's Hilaria, there's their kids, right? She posted the exact same video. I read this. I bet it's hilarious, but I don't have time. But look at the photo she used as the thumbnail. She used a picture of the family at the end of the video, welcoming their new, their seventh child. All these, these kids are, they're all blonde, Anglo-looking kids, right? But you look at Alec's picture. This is his. He used a picture of himself, right? This is Alec Baldwin's Instaghoul. He used a picture of himself. She used a picture of the family, that hairdo. Many people are talking about her eyebrows, her eyebrow game in in the comments section. But how effed up is it that he used a picture of himself, right, when it's a family video? They're both narcissists, but one of them seems to be just a little bit more so. So there's that. And there's also this. A Republican senator just went there on Joe Biden. This is Chris Cillizza. He's some CNN political guy.
My approval ratings are extremely high. Many people are saying it bigly. With just more than 200 days left until the 2022 election, there's a very little evidence that President Joe Biden's poll numbers are improving. And there's actually some data to suggest that things are getting worse for the president and his party. CNN's poll of polls, an average of the last 4 national polls of Americans, pegs Biden's approval rating at just 39%, with 55% disapproving. Those numbers haven't changed all that much from the 40% approval, 54% disapproval that CNN's poll of polls measured in March, or the 41% approval, 54% disapproval that they had in Biden from mid-January. Those numbers also make clear that the bump Biden experienced in some polling in the immediate aftermath of his State of the Union speech in early March was temporary and not evidence of some longer-term polling comeback. Now, Biden's poll numbers, with that slight bump notwithstanding, have been remarkably consistent and consistently mediocre for the better part of the last year. Now, this is all bad news for Democrats whose electoral fate, if history is any guide, and it is directly tied to Biden's popularity or lack thereof.
So the whole video is about Joe Biden's unelectability and his poor poll numbers, right? But then this is what the text was. I thought the video was this, but they didn't include this in the video. In a blistering statement released Tuesday morning, Florida Senator Rick Scott said this of President Joe Biden. Let us be honest. Joe Biden is unwell. He's unfit for office. He's incoherent, incapacitated, and confused. He doesn't know where he is half the time. He's incapable of leading, and he's incapable of carrying out his duties, period. Everyone knows it. No one is willing to say it, but we have to. for the sake of the country, Joe Biden can't do the job. And this reporter, Chris Cillizza, says this unproven notion. Now, what he means there is they haven't done any sort of physical or psychological evaluation in which a professional gives Joe Biden a set of coherency and cognitive tests and proves that he has dementia, right? And so that's because they haven't chosen to do that. They have doctors who are signing off on his physical and psychological health when clearly we can all see he's falling apart, right? We know this happened before with Reagan, who for the last 2 years of his presidency disappeared because he was, by his own son's words, he had Alzheimer's, right? Reagan disappeared the last 2 years of his presidency and was never seen again. And his son said, yeah, he had Alzheimer's those years. And so they hid him away. And that's Republicans, right? And so there's a precedent for this. And he says, this unproven notion that Biden somehow is enfeebled has been kicking around conservative media and Trump allied circles for some time now. The evidence usually revolves around clips of Biden misspeaking or stumbling over his words. And in fact, at the age of 79, he is the oldest person ever to have served as president. But then he doesn't go anywhere with that, right? Because he's saying it's just Republicans. When he knows, everybody knows, right? Like if this is your grandfather or somebody you worked with, you're like, oh my God, he's not functioning anymore. We've seen when he was running as a candidate, his functioning was bad, right? And it's gotten worse since then. And like this guy said, Rick Scott, everybody knows it. I don't like Rick Scott. I'm not a Republican. Everybody knows that Joe Biden is not there mentally, and it's gotten worse. And it was bad when he ran for president. It wasn't great beforehand. He was always a gaffe magnet, and he misspoke, and now it's worse, right? I mean, the guy, just look at the way he walks, And so he's not mentally up for the job. We all know it, right? And the Democrats and the media refuse to say it or even look at it and demand some accountability and some testing, right? He needs to be tested by, somebody that doesn't work for him, right? And his handlers. He needs to be tested by, the tests are right there in front of you. Any person who is, knows about this can look at him and say, yeah, he is breaking down mentally. Keeping that in mind, this idea that JoJo Magoo possibly has dementia, right? He has, multiple symptoms of deteriorating mental function. Like I said, just watch the guy walk. He walks like somebody who is, he's just not there, right? He looks lost, confused. All these things, right? There's so many different telltale signs here. And his poll numbers. He's doing a horrible job. More than half the country disapproves of him, right? And, with all that, Jimmy Kimmel nails imbecile Trump's newest lie with a damning fact check. And here he is, right? It isn't like JoJo Magoo is killing it. And if he was, why would you be focused on Trump? If JoJo Magoo was killing it and we were doing great, why would you still be focused on Trump? It's been, like 3 years now? It's, we're getting into the third year, since the election, right? And they're still focused on the guy and nobody else is. Like, people don't care. They have real problems and they're upset with the current president. And it's your job to make fun of the current president and his crackhead son who came on your show and you serviced him and you got on your knees and serviced him, right? In terms of, the book that he wrote about being a crackhead. it's, I've showed clips of that before. But here he is still obsessed with Trump, and it's like pathetic. It's sad, right? It isn't like, there isn't comic value in what JoJo Magoo brings to the table.
For the state of this country, why, I don't know what is. But Trump he never disappoints. He delivered a very special Mother's Day message. This is when you really see the difference between our current president and the last one. So
Wait a minute. You're saying that Trump somehow is worse than JoJo Magoo? Like, we can all see it. Like, what do you think? We're all dumb? Like, what level of consciousness does your audience have? He has an audience, right? Some hundreds of thousands of people. And that's what they see. They see that Trump is somehow worse than JoJo Magoo. mean, JoJo Magoo is barely functioning.
Joe Biden yesterday tweeted to his wife, "Happy Mother's Day. Flotus, you're the love of my life and the life of my love. You bring me joy and laughter every day, and I'm so grateful for everything you do for our family." Very sweet. So Trump...
Woo, he's so great, woo. Like, that's his team doing that. The guy's drooling on himself, right? Like, you know what you do? That's just fake. He has a team of handlers, right?
Trump's was more of a Yo Mama's Day message than a... He's on Truth Social and rewrote Happy Mother's Day to all, including racist, vicious, highly partisan, politically motivated, and...
You're laughing because it's actually funny, and the fact that he was the president and used to do stuff was very entertaining. You know, it's not presidential. Sure, I agree with that. It's not how a president should behave. But it was Trump actually, you know, being himself, where JoJo Magoo is handled, right, and protected. See, what Jimmy Kimmels is saying here is the very controlled and crafted, crappy, superficial, artificial statement that JoJo Magoo put out on Mother's Day, right? All his political handlers and team of people and publicists coming up with this message and saying what words you can use and what words you can. I mean, just old school, boring politics. The politics of suck and being fake and being a poser, right, is so much better than Trump just being himself and tweeting actual things that he thinks, right? And so, you know, that's what they've always said. They've said this since the beginning, that their real problem with Trump was he didn't play the part. He didn't fake it. He didn't act the way you were supposed to act, right? And, you know, that's what I loved about his presidency, right? He crapped out on in the end. He betrayed his followers. I mean, he had a lot of his own issues, but he was really entertaining because he tweeted stuff like this, right? And JoJo Magoo just puts out these statements that, you know, it's not coming from him or his heart, and they're just, you know, they're crafted talking points and just, you know, Hallmark cards, right, with nothing real in them. There's nothing real about JoJo's tweet.
Very unfair radical left Democrat. Judges, prosecutors, district attorneys, and attorney generals who campaign unrelentingly against you without knowing a thing and endlessly promise to take you down. This is his Mother's Day tweet, okay?
So I thought that this was Twitter. Then I remembered, hey, Trump got banned from Twitter, right? And so I was like, wait, did Elon Musk put him back on? And the answer is no. This is his suspended Twitter account. And so I went back and played this from Jimmy Kimmels.
Yo Mama's Day message. Then he's on Truth Social and rewrote Happy Mother.
So he's on Truth Social, right? You know, he's on Truth Social, which I don't know what that is. I'm assuming some right-wing sort of, you know, version of Twitter. And he's, you know, most people don't know what that is or how to find Trump's, right? Which shows you everything you need to know about all of this. Because JoJo Magoo posted this fake, you know, message that nobody wants to hear and nobody cares about, and it's just some contrived message. You know, when somebody sends you a birthday card, it's just some fake Hallmark whatever, right? You don't take it seriously. It's not coming from the heart. It's just done out of obligation. Where Trump posted something hilarious, and Jimmy Kimmel's actually laughing at Trump's tweet, whether he wants to admit it or not. Trump's a better comedian than him, and the audience is enjoying Trump's tweet. Which tweet is more interesting, JoJo Magoo or Trump, right? He read JoJo Magoo, Jimmy Kimmel, and spent like 30 seconds on that, and now he's spending like, you know, 5 minutes on Trump's, right? And Trump has been banned off of Twitter, and, you know, people don't even have access to his tweet, and he's not the president, and he's still far more interesting and a better topic of conversation, a better subject than JoJo Magoo.
This is his Mother's Day tweet, okay? After years of persecution, even the fake news says there's no case, or at best it will be very hard to bring. Someday soon they will start fighting record-setting violent crime. I love you all. And it's a harsh message, but, you know, if you color it in a little bit, it's actually quite sweet. Happy Mother's Day. I love.
You know, again, JoJo Magoo has a crackhead son. He is breaking down mentally, and even if those things weren't there, he's failing at his job. 50% of Americans are upset and disapprove of JoJo Magoo's job. And when that's the case, comedians are supposed to set in on him. That's their job, right? I mean, there's two crimes here. One, not being funny, which is your job as a comedian. And two, speaking truth to power. JoJo Magoo has the power. The Democrats and liberals have the power, not only in the Senate and in Congress, but also in, not only in the government, but also in media and social media. We have a liberal bias. And again, I'm not a conservative, but though that's the group, there's two groups. And the liberals have more power right now, right? It's just the way it is, despite the abortion thing and the rest. The liberals have more power than the conservatives. And yet he still is setting in on Donald Trump. He just can't let it go. It isn't like this is comedy gold. The funniest part about this is Trump's message, because it's effed up, but it's funny, right?
Love you all.
Woo, woo, you blocked out his woo, woo.
What do you think Trump did for Melania on Mother's Day? Offer her a bite of his McGriddle? Yet another member of the
Again, not funny.
Trump administration has written a book. His former Secretary of Defense.
Okay, so this is, Jimmy Kimmels. He's back from his hiatus or break or whatever, and this is what he's delivering in terms of comedy gold. Greetings, brothers and sisters. So I did this first part of the video you've already seen yesterday, and I was gonna do the voiceover last night, but I felt like it was, the mornings when I'm freshest and just coming off my meditation and sleep and whatever. So for obvious reasons, I have more energy for these things in the morning. And what I wanted to talk about was like true leadership and real concern for human life and, the American people in this case. And something simple that could be done in most places in America that could help with, this idea of pockets of the future and adapting and changing to the, transitional period we're going through. You can see that their obsession with Trump and their denial of Biden, that's what the media focuses on. But if you search for food shortages, this is a global problem. There are, they've been talking about this before COVID. They're predicting food shortages, which is hurting people already in various countries, and then inflationary prices where people can no longer afford food. And we live in a very fragile food system. People think, there's always groceries at the grocery store. There's always, abundance of food here. In America, people maybe, feel whatever they feel in their country, given their, maybe once in a while they experience shortages because we get the food first, right? We're paying a higher price for it, so we get the food first, but it's a global system. And if there's one failed crop, specifically corn, but it could be something else, there's just a crop failure, one bad year, or there's issues with electricity or gas. I mean, two energies that are needed. Electricity is needed for refrigeration and processing of foods, and gas is needed for shipping of foods and also running the machinery to harvest and things, plant and things, right? So if there's a failure in the energy system or the economic system, then, there would be almost immediate. It's not like they have huge stores of food, right? Everything's grown and processed. There's like a 4-month window, and then the food would be gone, right? It takes 4 months to process all the food that's been harvested and, things like this. But a failed crop, there would be, a long period of time of famine, global famine. And of course, the economic system, the collapse of the debt-based system. So there's all these different ways there's going to eventually be some food shortages. We're moving from the time of abundance to deprivation. Also a people shortage, and you think, all right, less people, more food, but you need people to harvest, and people are a part of the food system. So if there's not enough people to do all the jobs, as we're seeing now, so there's all these ways, right? But they're talking about this. They've said it over and over again. They're saying it's going to happen. It's happening now. And so there's a simple way when you have a problem like this there's a simple solution that can happen on a local level. They used to call it victory gardens in World War II, to do with the victory in the war, where local people were asked to grow food, right? Some people are, doing this. A lot more people are getting chickens and things like this. But that, you have to be able to feed the chickens, right? Like that's the other part. Like we're all feeding our chickens with, store-bought grains and things. They can free range, sure, yeah. I mean, that's ideally what they do, but also you need high protein chicken food to produce the kind of eggs that you're getting, right? If your chicken's just free range, you're not going to get enough protein. They will in the spring, but not, certainly not in the winter when there's nothing to free range, right? And you can feed them food scraps, but I mean, it's the same issue. It's the food coming from the beastly system, but at least it's a step in the right direction. Some people are growing food or focused on this, but the majority aren't. And there's a very simple local solution, and they have these sort of community-supported agriculture farms, but also you have cities that have public lands that are everybody's, in the town or the city, that can be cleared, and then people can reserve little plots of area or work together to grow community-based foods. I mean, you can see this when you get some sort of intentional community, people do this. But it's a way to bring people back to a village-based mentality. It's very simple. Like you have a plot of land, and you have the town, whatever. They have some plows, or people have, people have farm equipment in the area. And there's some sort of, water system. There can be some sort of irrigation system depending on where you live, right? And, you have some people with knowledge, in the town itself, farm people in charge of, farm, whatever it is, and, and just individual farmers and homesteaders, most of whom love to talk about this stuff and share their knowledge and want to get other people to grow food because, it's their thing and they're into it. But also, when you have food, and you're heading into a food shortage system, a food shortage, sort of a nightmare, then you also want other people to grow food, right? It just makes sense. It's better for everybody. And so locally, you can start doing that. And people can, have bigger and bigger plots of land and expand it. And then you can also grow, food forests, which are, forests that produce perennial food, fruit and nut trees, and then various types of vegetables and herbs and things, healing herbs and fruits and things that grow underneath the canopy of these fruit and nut trees, right? I mean, it's a global thing. Everyone should look at it's something that everyone should be aware of, because these food forests are automatic food, right, where they produce food year in and year out, and they need very little maintenance because their leaves drop and their whatever it is. You put initial inputs into the soil, and then everything sort of grows naturally and becomes self-sustaining with very little effort. Like what you can do if you grow it on a hill, at the bottom of the hill you put a little pond on top of the hill, and you get ducks and geese and things in the pond, and they can be, or fish or whatever it is, which can also be a part of the food chain, and then the food system, and then water leaks down from the pond or can be irrigated into the food forest with all this rich nutrients in it and things. Animals, like you can have your chickens be a part of it and things like that, go in there and defecate and scratch and do whatever they do to help boost the soil production, the soil, the nutrition in the soil. But it's a very simple, like they present the problem. Oh, we're going to have global food shortages, to panic you and then move you into a, Agenda 31 type of situation. But what you can do is, combat that food shortages by having, instead of depending on these evil factory farms that grow food in a way that's damaging to the soil, damaging to the animals. I mean, it's, inhumane to the animals and, damaging to the environment, and it's toxic, and Monsanto and all these things. you can grow local food, and it helps people build community. It helps people get away from. I mean, a lot of young people are craving real life experiences. They want to do things in the real world, even if they don't know it. And so, if you have people panicked about food and they show up in the grocery stores empty, and you have, these already pre-established places that can just grow, and they can expand your plots, your acreage in terms of farming, you can have immediate turnaround, right? The town can invest in. I mean, fruit trees aren't all that expensive. You find out what goes locally. I mean, you plant them, and then in a few years, there's harvestable food, right? There's just, I mean, it's not. People have been doing this for centuries, and why we have this great equipment, like having had a tractor now for a number of years, I can tell you, like, having done it without a tractor and with a tractor, it's amazing what you can do. And so, then you have a lot of people, community doing this, and people with shared knowledge, and you can have beehives and things, right? And so before you know it, you have a little village-based community. They're working together to produce food, and they're just knowing your neighbors and things like this. And you've taken away this, the threat, because in America specifically, but globally, but America very, very much so, it's very easy to grow food because we have incredible topsoil in much of the country. It's the native peoples kept America a very pristine place, right? They didn't over harvest the trees. I mean, in most cases, they left the trees alone, and that's one of the things that happens when there's this establishment. You see this in Europe where they cut down all the trees and they didn't plant new ones, right? Deforestation. And so there's that. But we also have so much fresh water. And, pretty much everywhere that has a piece of land, you can grow something in America. Some places, obviously, the desert areas, but those places can be even cultivated, with more, input, because we have so much compostable. Like, that's the other thing. People are throwing away gobs of food, grocery stores. I mean, all those things can be composted, right? Things that, that aren't fit to eat, but if they were, work together, people are going to grocery stores, taking away their, things that they're throwing away, the produce that's not used, and start composting that and, putting that into your soil, taking the cow dung and things at these farms where, there's all these cows and, whatever that, they have, especially the factory farms, it's not the best quality. I mean, there's going to be some toxins in it. It's not organic, but still, it's cow dung, right? And there's ways that you can, take what is considered waste right now and turn it into compost and then good soil. And I mean, there's all these things, right? I mean, once people start doing it and start learning about it, and you get, engagement from the community, it creates a, a positive vibe. And then there's, the more the food shortages or the more the inflationary aspects is, you can, grow enough food for your local area, and, it's a backup system. And if we had true leadership that didn't want to create panic and wasn't pushing an agenda, that's what they would do. In the ashrams and the heartfulness system, specifically the big ones, there's a couple of really big ones with lots of land. The one in Hyderabad, the main headquarters, they have so much food there. I mean, I, showed a video of my wife and I. We were going through the gardens. They put in an area. It went from just an area where it was just like desert-like soil. When I first saw the ashram, it was like mostly farmland or just barren land. And it was dry there, and it gets hot. And so there really wasn't much growth. There wasn't much plant life. There was a few trees, and it was just a lot of empty acreage. They have a rainy season, right, where it rains a lot, like typhoon season, where they get a lot of storms, and it, really, really hard rain. And then it's dry for most of the rest of the year. And so they have developed these holding ponds where they can irrigate the crops. And they've grown big, vast fields of rice, which is you need some sort of a staple, right? Some, rice or wheat or whatever, of corn, these things that you can make bread out of, and it just keeps you full, It's just, carbs, right? And then, but they created these gardens, and we were walking through, and there was just, fruits and vegetables that we knew about, and it was enough. They were feeding the people at the gathering with this food, right? But in the future times, when people, these ashrams are supposed to be safe havens, when these prophecies come true and the whispers of the brighter world messages, which I've read in my journey series, that these, it's a transitionary time, and we're all dependent on a food system right now. But you can learn to grow food, but the earlier that you start, the better, right? It's not like you quit your job and you run out to the farm. It's, you still have to live in the system the way it is now, but you can spend some of your, people can, and I'm not, again, recommending things. People have to assess their own personal situation. But you can see the writing on the wall. They're talking about it, and, the apocalypse is up for people, right? People are aware of these things. You see these post-apocalyptic situations where people are, trying to figure out how to get food, right? Grow food and, learn how to, whatever it might be. And there's ways that people can learn, right? There's ways that you can, take what we have now, which is incredible tools, right? We have, not just tractors and machinery, but just our hand tools and things like that, right? When my family and I were thinking about moving to India, and we had people who, a preceptor came to our farm, and he said, we were like, what are some of the things we should bring? And he said, oh, tools, right? Because the tools in India are not nearly as good as the ones we use here. The shovels and, things like that. And so we have, these great manufactured tools and things that farmers in the old days wish they had, right? That these, indestructible, some of the shovels and things, hard to, imagine what they used to have to use, right? And so, like, having the ability to water things and, and build up the nutrition in the soil and all these things that we can do now. And then once the system collapses, we won't have those things, right? We'll have whatever's left over from, the system, right? And then those things will wear out and break down, and the next generation has to figure things out. But we're dependent on a global, national system, and not so much on our local environment, our local, brothers and sisters in this world, and, a village-based system. Many of us don't know our neighbors and, all of that, right? And when the national system goes down and there's no more trucks going, state by state, dropping off foods from other places and even from other countries, when we have to grow things locally, well, this stuff has to happen, right? The things that can happen now so much more easily, and people can just get their skill level up and, get their feet wet and whatever and produce something, right? If you think about all the towns around America, all the places that have land and have, the potential to grow some food, and you shift into this local, you have these big major food companies that don't want that, right? And then the national system. But if there was true leadership, they would say, all right, you guys, we see the writing on the wall. We're talking about food shortages. We see the inflationary problems that are going on. We can grow things locally. Even if you don't eat it yourself, you have more than enough, you can give it to people who are, people under the poverty line who are struggling, right? And so when oil prices are going up, right, and there's energy issues, and they want to move to, and there's talk about global warming, climate change, right? Well, then you can really, on a local basis, without the high price of shipping, you think about all the fuel that's being burned, all the CO2 that's being emitted. If they're serious about this, then they would encourage locally grown food, right? Reduce the amount of food that has to be shipped into your area. These things can expand as people do it. And, it's a way of, you have a budget, you need income to pay for food, right? Everyone has a food budget, how much money they spend on a yearly basis on food, right? And if you decrease that and you use some of your free time to, get away from the, computer and the screens. All these people who, are here in the truth community that just dive into the rabbit hole, but aren't doing anything on their own personally or as a family, doing anything to, deal with what they can see, right? The collapsing system. I mean, they present these problems like food shortages and global warming and, the fuel prices, going up and dependence on foreign oil, all these things, right? The petrodollar, and you have all these, these problems. And one of the solutions here is some sort of community-sponsored agriculture. And if the towns won't do it, most towns, if they had the idea, would consider this, and there's people willing to do it. You can find farmers or people who are willing to sort of rent out farmland, and then people can. We have these farms that do this community-supported agriculture, and people can come and volunteer and help grow food there and do those sorts of things as well, right? And so, it is and then you get, fresh organic food that's locally grown. Locally grown food, the food that grows in your local area is the very kind of food that you need to be in that area, right? Everything has its own sort of vibratory quality and its own climate. And, in places that are tropical, you need tropical food, right? Places that are desert oriented or whatever it is, right? You have these different, flatlands and mountains, and you have all these types of places. And the food that grows there is the kind of food that your body needs to live and survive in that area. Local food is great, right? Things that are grown in the area that you live in. But people have become problem-centered. Like, this is a very simple solution. But people don't want to try. They don't want to change. Even like most of you hearing this, right? Like, that the system's collapsing, or you're worried about it. A system we're 100% dependent on. And there's simple things people can do to just, even just starting a small little garden in their backyard and just, doing something where you grow a little bit of food just so you learn how to do it, right? And then, of course, people can save seeds and, have seeds and things available, for a, post-apocalyptic situation. And, no matter what happens, at least moving forward in the right direction. It's another reason to be spiritual. Like, many people won't survive some big events that are coming, whether it's World War III or other tumultuous events that are going to hit, these upheavals. We're in a time where just these things will happen. Depopulation, maybe diseases or biological weapons that are released. Whatever it is, right? There's going to be depopulation. And some of us won't survive. It's just going to be whatever it is. But if you're moving forward in the direction of a pocket of the future, right? Pocket of the future means people living now the way all people have to live in the future. And so this idea of the heartfulness meditation that I do that connects people to God internally, which is going to be a prerequisite, it's going to be mandatory for people to survive in the future. Right now, it's not. People don't have to have a relationship with God. It can depend on the beastly system. When that system goes down, and we need to learn things and adapt and change, then people are going to have to go back and, connect with their soul and connect with God. And the vibratory fields, all these things are going to change in ways that people, can't even understand now. And you can't be a sociopath and survive in the future, right? The system awards for people with personality disorders. Selfish people do well and grab things, and the system aggressive people. But in the future, that's not going to be the case, right? People with those kind of personalities and tendency towards evil and going against God's will suffer, and they won't be able to. Everything will block their path to survival, right? They just won't have a free go as they have now, a free pathway to success, because being selfish, our system rewards for being selfish and greedy and narcissistic. But in the future, that won't be the case. There'll need to be more of a communal, service-oriented personality to survive. And, people can start, working on that, do something. And, local governments and local, people, just communities can start seeing the writing on the wall. And we can see it and start saying, oh, what do we need? If the current system we're dependent on is collapsing, what can we do now? that take control back of the things that we're dependent on the system for. And one of the biggest ones is food, right? But people need food and water in these things, right? And these things there can be adjustments, right? People can put in hand pumps and wells and irrigation systems, and figure out ways to get water in ways that when it doesn't, when your tap, when your sinks and your faucets don't work anymore because there's no water, city water anymore. Where do you get your water, right? And how do you dispose of your waste? Like, how do you get rid of your garbage and your human waste when you don't have water? Your toilets don't work anymore. So these are things that people need to have in their system, right? What are you going to do? Like, what can we do right now in case the system, what can we do to create a backup? And one of the things is, start farming and doing these things. And as you do it, you start learning more and, adapting more. There's people with knowledge, and there's also YouTube videos, and, there's books and things you can get, and, just people out there on YouTube who show you how to do things. People have been doing it for years, people who grew up doing these things. And there's still some knowledge base out there, that's eroding away, but you can, find it. Now you can listen to, watch these things. This is what I did originally, but it wasn't like I had a lot of knowledge. It was, my farming videos was about me and my family learning how to be farmers, right? But, it still was good in that way. But there's people who are experts and who have been doing this successfully for a long time. They grow a lot of their own food now, and they, sell their food to other people. And so, it's just changing from a global system to a local system. And the government doesn't want that, right? They want to scare you. They want you to say all these problems that are out there. And so they can give you their solution, right? Problem, reaction, solution. So they're not in there, giving you actual solutions. But if you hear, all right, there's food shortages coming, well, we can grow food. Like, people have been doing it for, thousands of years, right? And so if we had true leadership, and we had anything, like, I mean, anything, just human beings who are like, all right, look, this system may not be around. Like, the people who run the system are, they're frantically trying to hold on to power and control, right? That's their biggest goal, is to, keep the system going, and, and telling people, all right, the system isn't as strong or indestructible as we've been telling you, that there might be an issue here. Lots of them, right? So they're not going to tell you that, and because they're selfish narcissists, and they don't want you to be able to have the power to control your own, food system, right? And this has been something that's been going on forever. People growing local foods, right? Tribal situation, villages, even, local communities. There was gardens, and like I talked about, the victory gardens in World War II, right? So, and just being able to do it and seeing if you like it, because sometimes everyone has a farmer or a homesteader in them, like genetically. It's a part of the human makeup. Like, this is how humans survive. This, global system we have now, where people live like, insects in a hive, like some sort of, beehive, a colony mentality, right? As opposed to, these city places where everyone's packed together. This is an anomaly because of a Ponzi scheme, the debt-based economic system, and all the things that have gone with it. And so, you can work an 8-hour job, a specialized job, and the system does the rest for you. But that's, you look at the history of human race, this is an anomaly, a short period of time where, and even now it's not 100%, not all humans are living this way, right? There's some people who still are, living in a more aboriginal way globally. But it's the first time in history that this kind of system's been there. It doesn't last very long. It never does. And then people go back to having local dependence, community. They have local communities where the community itself produces enough, food and everything else they need to survive, right? And so, you don't have the abundance, you don't have the opportunity to travel, and you don't have, Amazon and all the wonderful, things that you can just order at the click of a button, but you do have, your needs met by a community situation. And people are healthier psychologically and, all these other ways. I mean, human beings have survived without this system we have now, but not, not being as like, we're like zoo animals who have lost the ability to be human beings, and that has to be reclaimed. I mean, it's something where, I've talked about this so much, this, the promise, the unsustainable promise, the broken promise, the promise that was going to be broken, that if you left your skills, this is what was said to your grandparents and your parents or great grandparents. If you left your skills, you left your village, you left your, you had these places where there was famine and, people, I mean, local communities suffer all the time. Homesteading, nature turns against you, right? There's, an early frost or a late frost or, whatever it might be. Floods and drought and, all these things. Heat waves and, cold spells, storms and insects. I mean, there's just ways that nature can screw up your harvest, right? And so, people toiled and struggled and, it was a difficult life. It's much harder than what we have now. And so you had this system, this debt-based economic system, and they said, look, you just come off the farm, you're struggling, you're toiling, you live in these cities, you're going to have running water, you're going to have, cars to drive, all the things that are being presented here. All you have to do is work a job and contribute your part to the system. Everybody does that, and your needs will be met, right? And the system is a great idea, and it'll go on forever. You'll never need these skills again, these farming skills. That was a false promise, right? They had nothing to back that up. So people left the farms, and sometimes they were forced off them because people don't like to change. They're attached to their way of life, their ancestral heritage, and they've been doing things the same way for generations. But now, modernization, and so they left the farms, and then we all became these weak sheep that are dependent on a system that was inevitably going to collapse. And so now there needs to be, reclaiming of some of these skills and the work ethic and our knowledge and our ability to read nature and read the situations and, like, most of all, connect to God internally so that we can get proper guidance and make the right decisions moment to moment, with our soul and God as being a steward, a partner with us, guiding us on our way, our path moving forward. But anyways, like I said, in the beginning of this video, you see like the narcissistic aspect of Alec Baldwin, his wife, right? In their stupid Instaghoul videos, and then the obsession with Trump and the denial of how bad JoJo Magoo is. And that's, what they want you to see. That's what they want you to focus on, right? Oh, yeah, there are going to be food shortages, and they'll tell you and scare you, and then eventually they'll give you the solution after, reducing your lifestyle and things. But, you can take some of that power away from them and put it back in your hands of your local community by investing in, doing these things. I mean, they even want to make it illegal. They've tried to make seeds illegal. I mean, they've done all these things. There's been all these laws prohibiting people from growing food, slaughtering animals as a risk of disease. I mean, the government's actually even working against this in many places around the world, and the corporations don't want you to, they want you to be dependent on this, just like they want you to be dependent on their medicines and their, everything else, right? They want, more dependence and more weakness. Even now that they themselves see that the system is unsustainable, right? It's a system that's unsustainable, and yet they're trying to do everything in their power to make you more dependent on it. And, that's like a sickness. It's a, an evil insanity. Anyways, there it is. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pointing from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.